Welcome to Jets Talk. My name's Ryan. I'll be your pilot. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. Boys and girls, I do a call-in show every Monday from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. So if you want to call in, let your voice be heard, whether it be good or bad. This week's going to be a good one. Tune in 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And then Tuesday, we come back with our Talking Jets panel, myself, O'Leary, and Green Bean. So get all your questions ready. We have the roundtable, and it's a lot of fun to get into it. But let's hop into today's video. We're getting our top 5 takeaways from Jets win over the Eagles, 20-14, first win over the Eagles in franchise history, and I'm all sorts of excited to get into it. So without further ado, let's get into my number 5 takeaway, and that is, oh man, Bryce Huff, this dude's got to get paid. He has been absolutely electric for the Jets all season long, dating back to last year. Heck, I saw this stat pop up, and this was just absolutely crazy. Like, basically, every time this dude rushes, his pressure rate is 25.7%. A quarter of the time, he's putting pressure on the quarterback, and we were using him as a situational pass rusher for, like, the last 2 years. Now, you see, look at the marks he's with. Rashawn Gary, Micah Parsons, Brandon Graham, Myles Garrett. That is elite company that he is in with. And he's 4%, 5% almost better than the next best player on there. So I'm really excited to see what we can get out of Bryce Huff. In yesterday's game, he had 9 pressures, 1.5 sacks, 6 pressures were on early downs, 5 all season long on early downs. So the last 2 weeks, the Jets have actually been using Huff a lot more frequently on the earlier downs. We've seen him as a situational pass rusher, and it's kind of been frustrating from a fan perspective because the sort of, I don't want to say the tape, the knock on Bryce Huff was that he was so fast, he's going around the edge, he's not really good against the run, so you can't use him on early downs. But it seems like the Jets are getting more and more comfortable. They're realizing this guy's elite. You look at those like XY charts and you see Bryce Huff all the way in the top right-hand corner. That's a good thing. He is in like elite company, and the Jets are only paying him 1 year, $4 million. He signed a restricted free agent tender this past offseason, so he's going to be up for a contract at the end of this season. And when you consider what other edge rushers are getting right now, Nick Bosa leads the way, just got his fresh contract, $34 million. TJ Watt, $28 million. Joey Bosa, $27 million. Myles Garrett, $25 million. Khalil Mack, $23.5 million. Crosby, $23.5 million. Bradley Chubb, words are screwing me up right now, $22 million. Hendrickson, $21 million. So clearly, Bryce Huff is severely underpaid for the production that we're getting out of him right now. And the Jets are going to have a really, really tough time trying to re-sign him because you want to try and, I think most Jet fans probably want to look at that franchise tag and say, okay, that's kind of for Mekhi Becton. You don't know whether you can pay him without him being able to stay healthy. So we kind of want to reserve that tag for him. But the way Bryce Huff has been playing, you can't let the dude leave. I am sorry. You got to figure out some way to re-sign this guy, get him on a 2-year, 3-year, let's call it 3-year, $60 million contract, $20 million a year. That feels like the right move. Like somewhere in the Trey Hendrickson sort of area for Bryce Huff is where I would like to see him be. And just let him grow. Let him grow. Let him continue to pin his ears back. You cannot let this guy get out of the building. He has been absolutely elite at the most important position on the defense. And I understand we have a wealth of pass rushers right now. You just spent a first-round pick on Will McDonald this year. You spent a first-round pick that you traded up for in Jermaine Johnson last year. Both those guys look like they're going to be good, but they're on cheap contracts. So why not lock in a good edge rusher for the next 3 years while those guys are on their cheap contracts before you have to extend them? So I'm on board with this. I love that Bryce Huff has really gotten into it. And look at the way Joe Douglas is looking. This picture is from yesterday's game. Joe Douglas, tell me this guy is not thoroughly excited for everything that Bryce Huff has been doing. He's going to try and re-sign him over the bye week. I think that's where their head is starting to get to. They're like, okay, we really got to make sure this guy doesn't hit free agency. And you see the last 2 weeks, I should have pulled up the stat, but there's like, you look at the amount of reps that Bryce Huff is getting, and he's starting to see more and more opportunities on those early downs and distances. And I think the Jets are starting to realize, hey, we need to like pay this dude a lot of money. Let's make sure that we like what he's doing on the early downs. And so far, he has been producing. Bryce Huff, absolutely awesome for the New York Jets. Number 4, it's a little bit of a wombo combo, and that is Quincy and Quinton Williams, the brothers Q. Their grandmother was in attendance. Quincy got an interception. Quincy almost had an interception, wound up having a fumble recovery. That's the first time two brothers had a turnover since, I think it was 2010, and then before that was like 1980, I think is what it was. Their grandmother was in attendance, and the last time they had their grandmother in attendance, I believe they both score or like whatever it was. You got to have grandma at every single game moving forward. Talk about elite brothers. The Jets don't normally have these types of situations where you sign someone a little bit early and you get the benefit of a huge, you have them under contract for 3 years. Quincy Williams, we just signed Quincy Williams this year. And when you look at the contract, you're like, okay, it's a little bit of, a slightly, I don't want to say elevated contract, but you could see that the Jets were investing in the future. And he's playing like an all-pro caliber linebacker right now. No joke, Quincy Williams might be the best linebacker in the league. I think he's definitely top 5. He is a heat-seeking missile. I want him and his nose to just whack any quarterback that tries to get outside the pocket. He is elite in coverage. He's cleaned up those like overruns or maybe poor pursuit angles or maybe unnecessary hits. Across the board, Quinnen and Quincy Williams, there is no better brotherly duo in the NFL right now on the same team. Bosa brothers, sorry, you're on different teams right now. But Quinnen and Quincy, really excited from what we've got out of them so far. This is going to be a lot of fun watching the rest of the way out, and I'm glad we got to keep those two together for a long, long time. Next up, I want to talk about special teams. Like, absolutely crazy. Greg the Leg Zuerlein, 4 for 4 on field goals, 43, 42, 35, 38 yards. We did have an opportunity. Salah looked like he looked at Zuerlein and was like, hey, 58 yards, how you feeling about it? And Greg didn't really give him like the quick thumbs up. It was more of like a, should I go out there? Should I not? And they didn't pull the trigger. They wound up going for it on 4th and 5, I think is what it was. And I believe Zach threw the 4-yard pass to Conklin on the sideline. I think that's the drive that we're talking about. And then later on in the game, there was another opportunity that was kind of close. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking like, he's got the monster leg. Why not kick it with him? He's been automatic. But you wonder if wind was an issue. You wonder if his groin was still possibly, maybe it's too big of a kick at that point, which is kind of weird because I feel like if you're kicking from 42, 43 years old, yards away, you're going to be booting the ball as far as you can at 58 yards. I trust Zuerlein. It's nice to have a good kicker, and I feel confident in any situation with him. Thomas Morstead had 4 punts, 48.5 yards, 3 of them inside the 20, with 1 being pinned inside the 10. That was Irv Charles that wound up making that play. The Jets made the decision to bring him up and use him on special teams, and it was a big need because we lost Justin Hardy yesterday. We did not have our special teams ace and our special teams captain on the field. Forced fumble last week from Irv Charles, and then a tackle at the 10-yard line this week. The guy has been electric since he's come in and onto the 53-man roster. I love everything that we're seeing from our special teams unit because last year I shouldn't say last year for the kicking situation, but prior to last year, before we got Zuerlein, the kicking situation was on rocky footing for like 5 years. That was kind of the knock on Joe Douglas. Hasn't been able to find a kicker. Thomas Morstead comes back after we had kind of sent him away because we still had Braden Mann. Braden Mann had 2 punt returns for touchdowns that basically ended games last year, and now you're seeing the difference and the field position change that can happen when you have a good quality punter that can pin teams deep. You get the good hang time, your gunners get down there, and you're not getting returns left and right. And look, Irv Charles coming up, I think, is absolutely huge. Special teams is kind of the third forgotten part of all these teams because NFL's so prolific in the passing game. The Jets defense is so good. It's hard to give credit to the special teams unit, but when you look at how they're able to perform, especially when you can't get into the red zone, the Jets were 0 for 5 last week in the red zone. They were 0 for, I think, 4 this week in the red zone. Well, actually, shouldn't say 0 for 4. They got in once with the Bryce touchdown at the end there, but the special teams game is so important, and the Jets, with their defense and some struggles a little bit from the young quarterback, I think this is going to be absolutely huge, and they're the reason why the Jets are actually winning games, and it's the reason why they're back to 500 at the bye. So really looking forward to what we have out of the special teams unit moving forward. Next up, number 2, I want to talk about Bryce and Garrett Wilson. I had a little thing queued up where it's boom, and Nathaniel Hackett. So let's talk about hacking the offense. Because obviously, Jet fans, you all know Garrett Wilson, Bryce Hall, a lot of you guys probably have them on their fantasy team or on your fantasy team. I know I did. Bryce Hall helped me out at the end to win my fantasy matchup yesterday. As much as we were all screaming, don't go in the end zone, don't score. I love what we're getting out of these two players, and particularly the last 3 weeks out of Nathaniel Hackett. Remember, this offense was built around Aaron Rodgers. It was built so that way he could distribute the ball. And there's always been this knock on Hack, right? Since last year, or going back probably the last few years. Aaron Rodgers, 2 MVP seasons. Well, it's just Aaron Rodgers. Hack looks bad in Denver. Oh, well, Hackett sucks. Then he winds up coming to the Jets, and then, you kind of sneak out of week 1 with a win with the special teams punt return for a touchdown, and then you don't have great showings against Dallas and then against New England. So you're kind of scratching your head. And then the last 3 weeks against the Chiefs, they just said, screw it, let Zach throw. All of a sudden, the offense opens up. Last week against Denver, they're the worst run defense in the league. They come in and they go, yo, Bryce, 177 yards. Go do it. Nuts. Absolutely rips off a ton of yardage. And then this week, you see them getting the ball consistently back to the passing game. 30, I want to say was it 39 attempts for Zach or 33 attempts for Zach? Whatever it was, plus all the sacks they wound up taking. So they actually wanted to pass it closer to 40 times. So you could see what the game plan is. And that's not to say that other offensive coordinators didn't switch up game plans or that we didn't have custom game plans going in to each game in the past. But it feels like there is a clear identity and a clear consciousness of like, hey, we don't have to do the thing we always do, right? Like last year, it felt like we leaned on the running game a lot because we were afraid to let Zach throw the ball. And now you see him start to pivot a little bit and say like, hey, we're going to have to score more points against Kansas City. We're going to have to score more points against Philadelphia. We have to open up the offense a little bit more. And I think you're going to start to see both Garrett and Bryce get more and more opportunities to create big plays. Last night, Garrett Wilson, 8 receptions, 90 yards. Bryce Hall, 17 touches, 93 yards, and a touchdown. And you just keep getting the ball into these playmakers' hands. Heck, it doesn't even have to be a run behind the line of scrimmage for like Bryce Hall or Garrett. Throw a screen out to them. Let them make a guy miss. They're making one dude miss out in space, and they're able to scamper for a whole bunch of yards. When you have him behind the line of scrimmage, yes, Bryce can put his foot in the ground and make some awesome cuts, but why not get him out on the edge too? And it feels like Hackett is getting creative with these playmakers, and given a week of rest to get the rest of the team healthy and kind of look where you're headed the rest of the season. I like what we're seeing out of Nathaniel Hackett right now and the offensive side of the ball from the usage of weapons. And you see how they started to make the little bit of a shift. We saw a little bit more from Gibson yesterday, saw a little bit more from Jeremy Ruckert yesterday. And those little incremental changes create so much more firepower from the offense. Dalvin Cook taking a little bit more of a back seat in terms of amount of snaps percentage. Clearly, the Jets are better with some of the younger guys on the field, and I think Nathaniel Hackett's realizing that. I think the Jets are realizing that, and as these guys get more reps, it's only going to get more impressive as the season goes on. And then number 1, I want to talk about our boy, Zack Wilson. Yesterday's stat line did not look super impressive. 19 of 33, 186 yards. There was the big play from Garrett Wilson where Lazard had the crackback block. That basically eliminated like 35, 40 yards, whatever it was. And there were some other opportunities where we had penalties or the offensive line maybe wasn't holding some of their blocks and you wound up getting put on his ass. Few sacks that you didn't really like to see taken. But overall, I thought this was a net positive game for Zack Wilson. And I know the bar's not super high with what we're trying to look at, but the last 3 weeks from Zack Wilson, he hasn't been making mistakes, at least not super critically ones, like not ones that I can see being consistent issues, like the botched snap versus Kansas City. I think if the Jets get the ball back after that 8-minute drive, I think there's a good shot Zach leads us down the field. Then he has the interception against the Broncos. Again, super talented play by Surtain. And then this week, you saw him not have any turnovers. Big game against a strong defense in Philadelphia. The main things I want to look at from this week: he caught 12 men on the field at one point. We got the free play, and he rushed the team up to the line of scrimmage, catching 12 men on the field. That's an Aaron Rodgers type play. I believe that's what Sanchez said during the actual game. He worked the hard count to get the free play that allowed him to throw the ball to Garrett Wilson. So he really should have had over that 200-yard mark, and then you would have been in position possibly to score a touchdown at that point. You wound up not getting any points on that drive because of the penalty and all this wackiness. Really frustrating. And then learning from the naked boot sack that we had. There was the one play where Zach, had the play action to Bryce, rolled out and got taken down immediately by, I think it was Hassan Reddick. And then you go back towards, was it the last drive or one of the last drives of the game where the same exact thing happens, but it's mirrored. And Zach, as soon as he comes around, his head snaps. He sees the pressure right in front of him. Nice, easy throw to Jeremy Ruckert to get the first down. And you see how he's starting to learn each and every week, each and every series. And some of that, I think, comes from coaching and situational awareness. Some of that is Zach being prepared. Some of that is Aaron Rodgers being on the sideline. There's a whole lot to like about Zack Wilson. And if he can continue to play at least to this level, and then if you hope you get a little bit more incremental play as the season goes on, you're going to start feeling really good about Zack Wilson. And heck, watching Aaron Rodgers throwing passes on the sideline prior to the game, if you're every other player in that locker room and you're saying, okay, Jets got elite special teams, got elite defense, have elite weapons on offense, and if the quarterback can just figure it out, or if Rodgers can come back at the end of the season, this is huge. The Jets played the hardest schedule of any team through the first 6 weeks of a season ever. No team has ever faced 4 teams that had 12 wins the season before in their first 6 games, and the Jets did it, and they came out even. 3-3 at the bye week. I think Jet fans would have been really happy if that's what the Jets' record was with Aaron Rodgers at the helm. Now you look at the back half of the schedule, and you're saying, okay, if we did that to the first 6 games of the schedule, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Zack Wilson has had a higher QBR than all 3 of them. That's credit to the defense. That's credit for Zack Wilson for not, going crazy on stuff. This defense is elite. This team can absolutely do things going forward. And if you can wind up getting Aaron Rodgers back at the back half of the schedule, I don't want to think about it just yet. I'm like on the edge of my seat. But either way, I really love what the Jets are getting out of this team. I think Coach Saleh and the whole unit, the team's bought in. They're not giving up. It would have been real easy to roll over the minute your season was crushed with Aaron Rodgers going out 4 plays in, but this team has stayed tough. Think about just after the Patriot game, we thought this locker room was going to unravel. I am so glad this team stuck together. This is a different kind of unit, and I'm looking forward to the back half of this schedule. Guys, let me know your record predictions for the rest of this way out. What were your top 5 takeaways? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.